Okay, recently I was tuned into a conservative radio talk show, and the host made a declaration that she had once been a liberal, but had changed her stance and now was a conservative. Well, that absolutely intrigued me because you see, I too am a defector from the liberal camp. As a young man, I was a vocal supporter of all things liberal. I was inspired by the energy and the positive youthful attitude of John Kennedy, and even with him gone, there was an aura that remained, and I found Johnson's Great Society efforts to be compassionate and a splendid attempt to right past wrongs and promote true equality in America. So it got me thinking, where was it exactly that I turned away from the liberal camp and became one of those right-wing patriots? I searched my memory, looking for a time or a place or an event. What exactly did alter my point of view? And I couldn't identify it. So then it crossed my mind that there might be an exercise that I could do that would shed some light on this mystery. Perhaps if I would think back on my voting history, I could find where and why and when my point of view changed. And I figured presidential elections were probably the best way to do that because they were high profile, easy to remember, and there's only one every 4 years. So let's start here. My first presidential election, the first that I was qualified to vote for, was in 1968. And I'm absolutely positively certain that I voted a straight Democratic ticket that included Hubert Humphrey as the presidential candidate. I was still captivated by the memory of Kennedy and Johnson's Great Society. It's also very certain that I was influenced by my high school teachers and my college professors. As I think back, I can't remember one of them who championed publicly any Republican candidates or causes, but there were several of them who supported the Democratic Party and supported their candidates. They did that very vocally, and they did that in and out of civics classes. Okay, so one for the Democrats. In 1972, I voted for McGovern. I kind of held my nose and did that. I thought the way he went about dumping Tom Eagleton as his vice presidential candidate was very tasteless and awkward. But on the other hand, I thought Nixon, who was running for a second term now, had proved himself to be pretty shady. And as it turns out, I had that one right. Okay, third time, two for the Democrats, third election, 1976, Carter versus Ford. And I have to say in this one, I honestly don't remember. I don't think I was particularly impressed with Carter, but the Nixon scandal certainly tainted Ford. More than likely, I was still firmly in the liberal camp, and let's give this one to Carter. So now we've got three for the Democrats, although I have to tell you, I would never have voted for Carter in his second term. Whoa, there's a clue. Maybe we're finding something going on here. Maybe it was Carter's incompetence that turned me. Maybe it isn't so much that I became a conservative. Maybe I ran away from the Democratic Party. Let's file that and move on. Okay, we're up to 1980, and we got Carter versus Reagan. And as I mentioned, I was pretty much disgusted with Carter, and in no way would I have voted for him. So did I vote for Reagan? No, I did not. I voted for a third-party candidate. I voted for John Anderson. While I couldn't stand Carter, I also looked at Reagan, and I couldn't find it in my heart to vote for a Hollywood actor? Are you kidding me? A Hollywood actor? This is the real world, not a movie set. Okay, four for the Demis. But by 1984, when it was Reagan versus Mondale, I had changed my mind about Mr. Reagan. In his first term, he showed that he was proudly American, not apologetically so, like Carter, or for that matter, the guy in the office now. Yes, he was an actor by trade, but he sure seemed sincerely patriotic, and now seemed to have proven himself also as a statesman and a leader worth following. He didn't vilify the Democrats. In fact, he once was a Democrat himself. He was a unifier. I can't remember a time before, and certainly not a time since, when Republicans and Democrats worked so well together. Reagan didn't just shove his opinions and his policies down the throats of his opponents. Instead, together, they achieved things that were good for the country. Things that got done in a way that both parties could live with. Holy cow! Is that it? Am I a Reagan Democrat, or am I a Reagan Republican? Reagan was the first Republican I ever voted for as a president. Was it Reagan that converted me? I don't know. Let's look at something else. There was something else different in 1984, and that was me. By 1984, I was married, I had children, I had responsibilities, I was working in a responsible position. My sowing the wild oats days were in the rearview mirror. I had found my place in the community. Oh no. Was I just joining the good old boys club? Is that why I became a conservative? Did I just grow up? Is that what led me to think more conservatively? No, I don't think so. Because you see, I didn't vote a straight ticket when I voted for Reagan. In fact, I don't remember voting any straight tickets since the early 1970s. Nor have I voted for every Republican presidential candidate since Reagan. I did vote for Bush Sr. in 1988 and 1992, but for another third-party candidate, Ross Perot, in his famous charts, in 1996. I just couldn't find it in my heart to cast a vote for either Clinton or Dole. Since then, I have voted for every Republican presidential candidate. Wait, let me reword that. It might be more accurate to say that I have voted against every Democratic candidate since then. In fact, now that we're nearing the end of this exercise, it looks like one might conclude that I've not so much defected to conservatism, but rather I have deserted the Democratic Party just as they have deserted their principles and their ethics. I voted for Bush over both Gore and Kerry, two elitist hucksters, and they had little more to offer than their inflated egos. I held my nose and I voted for McCain, and then I enthusiastically voted for Romney. He's an achiever, and I think he would have been a good, strong leader that might have been able to get the country back on track. A pessimist might say that he was the last chance for America. Did I just say pessimist? Am I a pessimist? Well, I am certainly a cynic. To me, it is clear, it is crystal clear, that the Democratic Party and today's Democratic politicians have tarnished and destroyed the spirit of Johnson's Great Society. They're not helping the disadvantaged. In fact, the more disadvantaged that they can register on their voter rolls, the better it is for Democrats. They've learned that the more free stuff that they promise, the more votes that they get, and that's the way they run their business. Democratic political leaders tell you what you want to hear, just like a used car salesman. And if there's any used car salesman listening to this, please accept my apologies for lumping you in with the likes of Reid and Pelosi. Democrats have an elitist attitude. They make promises that they can't possibly keep, and they fund those unattainable promises with money that was intended for other programs. And then when things go wrong, they blame all of that on their adversaries, those polluting, nasty Republicans. This disgusting policy of demonizing their opponents has become the Democratic stratagem. It seems that Democrats no longer make any credible points of argument. They just trash their opposition. If you don't support their immigration bill, then you must be a racist. If you don't support Obamacare, then you must lack any kind of compassion. If you criticize Obama, well, then you have to be a racist. If you don't support their failed green energy policies, you must not care about trashing the earth. And if you support the Tea Party in any way, then obviously you are a racist. Racist. That's now the standard way of tossing anyone that they don't like under the bus. Anybody with an opposing opinion to the Democratic Party line is in danger of being labeled a racist. Well, it seems like I found the answer to my investigation on how I changed from a liberal to a conservative. It seems that the reason for my hard right turn is now clear to me. It seems that what the Democratic Party has become has offended me so much that I was forced to open my eyes and consider an opposing point of view. And what I found there was the common sense of conservative thinking. What I found there was problem solving based in reality, not in fantasy. It seems that, in my opinion, 21st century politicians are intoxicated with their power, and like an alcoholic or an addict, they will do anything to keep it. Democrats do their best to subjugate their constituents by convincing that they're victims, and they must rely on the government for an ever-increasing list of needs. Anyone who looks at the behavior of our politicians can see that for most of them, the maintenance of their power trumps the best interest of the country, and that is especially true, but not confined to the Democratic side of the aisle. Okay, as I close this post, it occurs to me that I don't know how many more presidential elections I'm going to be voting in. If I were an optimist, I would say that my hope is that in my lifetime, we could have the chance to restore our nation to the land of opportunity that inspired the entire world for well over 200 years. A nation that was created by founding fathers that did not selfishly seize power, but rather gave it to the people of the land and set up a constitution that ensured that would remain that way. The only nation in the history of all mankind that fought a war to end slavery. A nation that took the lead in ending the reign of despots in the 20th century, and who turned around and aided those very nations that they just defeated and helped them get their feet back on the ground and join us in civilization as trusted allies. Of course, if I were a pessimist, I would say that if we lose them, our gifts of liberty, justice, and freedom could only be restored, if at all, at an enormous cost. If I were cynical, I would say that politicians are buying your votes with your money and your children's money and your grandchildren's money just to satisfy their lust for power. If I were a pessimist, I would certainly worry that history repeats itself. I would worry that after the fall of the Roman Empire, that there was a 500-year period that we commonly refer to as the Dark Ages. I am a conservative. I am proud to be the grandson of immigrants who worked hard and long to make it possible for their children and their grandchildren to have a better life. I am grateful to be a citizen of this nation, and I pray that the blessings that I have enjoyed in my lifetime will still be here for my children's children's children. Thank you.